Bitch!
Hello, welcome to the Unimaginary Friendcast. This is Livestream episode number 265. This is a conversation with your socially distanced best friends, and we are those best friends.
I am Nathan Von Edmondson.
I'm Erin Marie, Betty Davis Jr.
And I am DavidMonster.com.
Woo! All right. So today we're going to be solving the world's homelessness crisis, which is no big deal, right? And we teased this topic a couple weeks ago. It turns out we are the only ones that are qualified to solve it. So that's what we're going to do today, with your help. So please make sure to post your ideas and suggestions as we go along. But first,
Jesus Christ.
David.
I'll go first. I'll go first. So this is happening in the future. And I just want to...
Can you clarify what this is?
So we're recording live, but we'll be posting this podcast after Justice League has been re-released on HBO Max. Huh?
Oh my goodness.
David? Aaron?
What? I never saw it. Is it any good? I heard it's really... Everybody keeps saying how bad the DC movies are. Is it good or bad or good?
I don't know yet. I will, when this podcast is posted on our... when it's posted, I will have watched it, hopefully by then. So it's Zack Snyder was the director of Man of Steel and Batman versus Superman, which had diminishing returns in critical acclaim. I'd say Man of Steel, people were like, oh, that was kind of good, and people were liking it, and some people were upset with it. And then Batman versus Superman, people were like, there was some stuff in there that was really terrible, but some amazing things as well. And then Justice League, and the story is really interesting because when Justice League was released, they were trying to do the Marvel universe, bring all the characters together. They were kind of rushing it in comparison to how Marvel set up their universe. But at the time, there was flagging support for Zack Snyder and what he was doing with the franchise because it's kind of dark and not as light and fun as the Marvel universe is. And he also suffered a personal tragedy. His adopted daughter, committed suicide. So those two elements led to him stepping away from the project and the reins being handed to Josh Whedon, who is just really hating right now. So the Justice League movie that ended up being released was absolute garbage. It was just so terrible, like way worse than I had expected it to be, or imagined it could be. And then rumors started surfacing that there was a Snyder cut, that Zack Snyder had taken his cut of the film that was unfinished when he left and was just going to like show it to friends and things like that. So word started leaking online. Super fans got a hold of that information and started demanding it. So eventually, with the release of streaming and HBO Max wanting to have something that they could throw on their platform that had a lot of buzz, they decided to refund him doing his cut. So I think they spent another $70 million doing some reshoots, doing special effects. And it's a 4-hour-long movie, apparently, which is pretty ridiculous. But that's going to come out March 17th. So we'll see what the reception is when that happens. But I'm pretty excited. Yeah, David.
Does it have the Legion of Doom in it?
I don't know what that is.
The Legion of Doom is the Justice League's organizational enemy.
Okay.
It's all the super villains.
I think there's just one predominant villain, and there may be some surprises. I think everything they wanted to do with the universe didn't happen, and maybe won't happen. The only real the biggest success is Wonder Woman that has come out of the DC universe. Actually, Aquaman was successful.
Those were both terrible, terrible movies. Just bad movies, badly written, embarrassing movies.
Anyway, I'm excited to see it. That's my news.
I was open to seeing it. Nathan is interested until he told me it was 4 hours, and then I don't know if I can do it. But anyway, I'll go into my news. I guess it's two pieces of news because I wanted this creature of the earth to get the gold star today, but everybody shot it down. Our precious Siggi is 1 year old today.
How do you celebrate?
I don't know. He's like beating the shit out of our adult cat right now. So,
Oh, that's nice.
for anyone that doesn't know, Siggi is, I guess, technically not a kitten anymore, but we got him in April. He was born on Leap Day. Not a Leap Day this year, so March 1st is 365 days later. But anyway, my news is that Ethan and I actually got out of the house last week and we went to an immersive art exhibit downtown, and art is interesting sometimes. It sounded really cool. It's immersive. It's something that is going to be in Philadelphia for a very brief period of time. Then it's going to Italy, so it sounds really awesome. It's only here for 2 weeks. But we walked in. It's free, and they were doing, good COVID social distancing and all that stuff. We got in and looked at it for about 15 seconds, and we're like, okay, yep, we saw it.
It was a small installation.
Yeah.
What was the immersive experience?
It was a big glowing orb.
Oh.
When you look, and there was a couple holes, and when you stick your eye in it, your eye gets projected on it, and it's supposed to be like some metaphor about how technology is in our brains and all that stuff. So,
so you're right. That's fun for 15 seconds.
Yeah, basically. So it's the right price point. It's in Philly until March 6th. It's called Sinistea. It's at Hotbed. I don't know if I recommend it, but it's free and it's something to do that's safe. That's my news.
I'd recommend checking out the art space.
Yeah, the actual gallery Hotbed is very, very cool.
That's awesome. I love art shit.
David, what do you got?
I'm too busy reading my new book
Caves
to get involved. Okay, this isn't my news because I'm not going to waste my news on P.A. Wyckoff, but this is his 37th book in like 7 years. And look at how beautiful his books are.
So P.A. Wyckoff, can you explain who P.A. Wyckoff is for people?
P.A. Wyckoff is a friend of the podcast, and he's my friend, and he's an author. And in the time I've put out 4 books, he's put out 37 books, and they're all beautiful, and I hate him.
He hasn't put out 37 books.
No, but it's something like 10 or 12 now, or something like that. And this one, Caves and Dinosaurs, comes with a game too, a board game. Like everything he does. He actually, this isn't part of my news. I don't want him to take over my news, but he actually puts out this other game where he recycles board games. He finds board games at thrift stores, or he just asks people to give him old board games that he doesn't want anymore. And he just puts stickers on top of it and makes it into his own game. He has a game where any board game he can turn into his game.
That's awesome.
They're so cool. It's so cool looking, and I hate his guts. So it's P.A. Wyckoff. You have to find him. Anyways, my news is that I had a friend on Facebook who I didn't know really well, but she was super cool, and she's an artist and everything. And we haven't been hanging out, obviously, but we've been trading, like quips and jokes and stuff back and forth. And she started this new group that sounded really cool where she wants to have a positive effect on the world and all that stuff. And her art is super out there, and she's very edgy. And I think she's a Satanist and stuff like that, which means she doesn't practice Satan worship, but she's for religious freedom and everything. So one day she posted a thing that said, she made a post that said something like, I need positivity in my life. Like, if you are one of these things, I'm sorry. I hope you have a good life, but I can't be your friend. And it was things like, if you're a Nazi, if you're a Trump supporter, and like a list of these things. And there were some things that weren't that, there were some things that were that extreme and some things that weren't that extreme. And as a joke, I wrote, I am one. I said, I am one of these things, but I'm not going to tell you which. And I put like a sad face. Blocked me immediately.
Wow.
Blocked me immediately. And I was like, wow, even like cool seeming people can be fucking idiots. Because I wasn't any of the things on the list, but that's a funny joke. And I posted it on other people's sites before, and they've laughed. Ha ha. Blocked immediately.
Well, I guess she wasn't fucking around.
I guess she wasn't. But we've made those jokes back and forth, so I knew I had that relationship with her anyway.
Well, I'm sorry.
Whatever. Who knows? I know. It's not. It's kind of like it's more funny because I don't. We're not really good friends at all, but it's funnier than anything. And it's sad because she's a great artist, but it's just people are so like you humans. Can you two just okay? You guys represent all humans right now. Can you just apologize for the lack of sense of humor all human beings have? Ready, go.
Not everybody understands everyone's sense of humor.
I'm sorry, David. I'm sorry.
No, don't say you're sorry. Say sorry for the lack of sense of humor.
I'm sorry for funnies.
Okay, good. Okay, thank you. All right, that's it.
Moving on to this week's Gold Star, we have Miss Lindsay Sobel, who is a 13-year-old from Los Angeles who formed an organization called Shoes for Souls. And she apparently gathered 30,000 shoes for homeless people. She's 13.
She's 13 and she started an organization.
That really makes me feel like I'm a useless member of society.
She had her parents' help, but still, it said in the article that she wanted to do it because she was somewhere with her parents and she saw that there was a homeless guy with no shoes. And she was like, and she said she was 12 and she felt like an idiot. She's like, oh my God, some people have no shoes, which is like a legitimate realization to have at 12. But like me, like, oh, people that have shoes, that's really sad. I'd go about my business. But she started an organization to raise 30,000 shoes because she's a good person.
And it's Shoes for Souls, like SOLE. So she even has a clever play on words.
Yeah, Shoes for Souls.
Right.
So if you can, you know, you can do, and if you don't, can't.
All right. So
all right.
Move on to our topic, which is solving homelessness. And
I think we just did, didn't we? Didn't Lindsay Sobel solve it?
She solved the shoe crisis. But I'm going to turn the reins over to Nathan. He's got all the juice.
Oh, wait, before you go, we have a listener, Dennis Shelgren, that apologizes for all human beings. And I want to thank you, Dennis, because that is what needs to happen. All human beings need to apologize to me by the end of the podcast.
He actually said we have Facebook apologize, which then therein means Facebook represents humanity.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah, that's a big chunk of,
I don't like
humanity.
that. All right, take it away, Nathan. What do you got?
The end to homelessness.
You've, because I have facts about homelessness, but you figured out how to end it completely?
I'm going to be done in about 2 minutes, so you better be ready with those facts.
Okay.
What do you got? Yeah, I'll put myself out there that I feel like I know nothing about this topic, and I'm excited to learn about it.
The one thing we do share, we all three saw a special put on by Margaret Cho about homelessness, and it was I think that we all talked about it afterwards, and we were very touched, and there were things we didn't know. Yeah.
That was the documentary we saw at the Chicago Comedy Film Festival, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, that was good. It was a nice short. So homelessness, let me just sum it up. It basically means people don't have a home, and we just got to get them homes. There you go. Solved.
That's the podcast.
Bye, you guys.
Everybody get a 2x4 and send it to the homemaking plot.
All right.
Simple, right?
That'd be interesting.
It's very simple.
Well, I figured the best approach would be to look at the history of homelessness in the United States. I figured that'd be a good place to start. So I was like, what are the factors that led to where we are now?
Oh, probably so many.
Well, it kind of even starts with what our view of homeless people were hundreds of years ago, based on the fact that we're a very Christian culture and nation, right? A very religious Protestant. So homelessness originally was viewed as a character flaw, and it just basically meant that you were effed up somehow. So I don't know if that still remains. What do you guys think?
I think that stereotype definitely still exists. It means it's your fault, you did something wrong. A lot of people, not everybody. But.
It exists, but there's a lot of compassion now. When I was a kid, my parents would talk about this all the time. there was no compassion for homelessness. It was 100% a character flaw. You would call them bums. Get a job. People would scream at them. I think I even heard my mother and my father scream at homeless people, like, get a job. And like, they had no, there was none. There was none of this compassion, none of this helping out, nothing. There were no organizations, nothing.
It's funny you say bomb, get a job, because I feel like there is kind of two views for homeless people. There's the it's their fault, right? They should just get a job. They're like trying to mooch off the system and live off the system. And then there's another view.
I feel like that's the Republican point of view.
Yeah, and it's funny because the history actually intertwines those things in a certain way, which I think is kind of fascinating. So the term tramp, have you guys heard the term tramp? So that started in the 1870s. But if you go back before that, fewer than 7% of Americans lived in cities prior to 1820.
Wow.
So we had a culture and a civilization wherein people basically fended for themselves, whether it was, farming or, I don't know. Yeah. How does that sound like something you like to do, David? Not one bit. So with the Industrial Revolution, that was kind of the first big change where you had a migration towards cities, people looking for work. So people went from kind of fending for themselves, doing their own thing, to migrating to cities to try and get jobs. But what was happening in between there was like these tramps were people who, usually men, young individuals, who were just kind of just going around the country trying to find work. Like basically, they didn't have land of their own or weren't able to farm, so they were just looking for work. So a lot of that work was like seasonal work, like working for, harvesting crops, that sort of thing, right? So they would, in between jobs, would just be kind of like looking for the next job. And in the 1850s, there were lots of lodging rooms for vagrants. And this was interesting. These were located in police stations. They were kind of the first major shelter system. So that was something
interesting,
kind of built into the system there. And the Industrial Revolution created this dynamic where instead of individual survival, you went to the model which we exist within now of looking for jobs under wealthy business owners. So homelessness was increasing during that time, but in the Civil War kind of brought it down because of all the death and so forth. There was a lot of work to be doing during the war. And then in the 1880s, the hobo style popped up, which ended up being romanticized.
The train jumping. Exactly.
So people were looking for work, kind of shooting around, and it became like this, I think probably was idealized in a way, right? To a certain regard, but I think that's kind of where the view of like the moocher kind of is born, like the person who chooses that lifestyle of, I'm just going to be a hobo. Like I'm going to run around and not be tied to anything. Rufus Wainwright covers a great song about that. King of the Road, I think it's called. I forget who the original artist was.
King of the Road. What's his name?
Who is it? Do you know?
King of the Road. Yeah, it's a big hit. King of the Road.
So what was also interesting during this time is that after the Civil War, they discovered morphine.
Roger Miller. Sorry, go ahead.
Who?
Roger Miller.
Okay, I don't know who that is.
He was a big hit. He was a big hit, like folky country singer.
So this is interesting. With all the injuries after the Civil War, they eventually discovered morphine and heroin. And these were drugs that they would sell like needles in Sears and Roebuck, right? So you could go and you could buy syringes. And
I didn't know that.
It became like this thing that people were, taking for pain management. But also they said that, I read that even like lonely housewives or people who lived in the middle of nowhere, just were so bored, they would do this as like something to do. So it's just funny how drugs are kind of there from even 200 years ago, more, or 150 years ago, however long it's been.
Wow.
As part of this problem, even starting back then. So I thought that was pretty interesting. So in the 1820s, companies decided that it was better business practice to try and keep workers tied to their jobs. So that started shifting individuals away from more of a hobo lifestyle to like, oh, well, you can actually get a job and they want to keep you instead of like pay you for whatever service they need you and then get rid of you. So that started shifting things at that point. But World War II was a big thing, right? So World War II.
Never heard of it. Sorry, go ahead.
So I think it was like 1940 something. The Japanese, I don't know. There's a lot of death. I think COVID. Anyway, so this was interesting because after World War II, you sent a lot of soldiers overseas and employed a lot of people, but it was after that homelessness went down dramatically during and after. And then over the next 3 decades, homelessness just started to disproportionately affect white and mixed, but increasingly older individuals who were disabled, dependent on welfare or Social Security, and residing in cheap hotels, flop houses, or what they call single room occupancy hotels, or SROs, in the poorest neighborhoods in Skid Row's area of urban America. So it went from like a young male to a older, less able population.
Were
Okay,
those veterans?
I would imagine some of them were, for sure. I would imagine.
I'm sure because they had no support system.
Yeah,
and we're talking about like people that were maybe have a disability that could have been injured in the war or got hooked on some kind of drug because they were injured, after when they came back.
PTSD.
That for mental health, for sure.
Yeah, totally.
So the 1980s was the era of what we consider the modern era of homelessness. So that was kind of the kickoff for that.
It sounds like it's like modern art. It's just so exciting.
Yeah,
dude. Yeah, people. The word homeless was not used until the 1980s. It was bums until the 1980s, and then it was like, oh, maybe we should acknowledge this.
That is interesting. I did not know that is a newer word to describe people.
100%. And I remember even because my father saying like, oh, now we got to call bums homeless. Like everything's like, like you have to be nice and kind about everything. And I just remember being like, wow, he can't even like. And that's the mentality, though. Like, you know what I mean? That's why. But go ahead.
What's interesting is over that entire century, there were various efforts. Like basically, at first, it was considered a local problem that people had to, cities and states had to deal with locally. And then it became more of a federal problem. And there'd be different attempts to deal with it, different strategies that they put forth, or investments or bills that were passed eventually. But what was I going to say about? Oh, what's interesting though is when you said that homelessness wasn't used until this time. It's how they categorize what is homeless has changed over the years. So it's actually kind of hard to study and track because what was considered those SROs or single resident occupancy was kind of considered homelessness back in the day, but is now considered adequate housing under HUD. So the terms have changed dramatically. So in the 1980s, you had gentrification of the inner city. You had deinstitutionalization of the mentally ill, which was a big deal. You had high unemployment rate, the emergence of HIV and AIDS, and an adequate supply of affordable housing options, and deep budget cuts to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development and social service agencies in response to what was the country's worst recession since the Great Depression.
Which one was that?
What's that? Was
that 2008?
So no, this is in the 80s. So I think it's like the tightening of the belt in the 70s that led to the Reagan era is the results for all this. So property values were increasing, and skid rows and SROs were raised for apartments and condos, right? So those inner city, urban, like low income housing, the revitalization of cities started to happen. So they just started tearing that down, but not really replacing it in an adequate way. Although in the 1970s, one of the strategies that they used was, and I'm sure you've heard of this, is Section 8 housing. And that was the first time they introduced private interests into trying to combat the problem. So it's basically apartment complexes that are low income that the government subsidizes, but they're run by private companies. So it isn't the government fully in charge of that, they're just giving money to that. So that's, I kind of see that as a corrupting influence to what could be happening to increase, to take care of the problem. So deinstitutionalization of the mentally ill. This is a fascinating part of it because it actually came out of the civil rights movement to try and improve people's lives, because there were a lot of people institutionalized living in, bad conditions, understaffed facilities, maybe not getting the care that they deserved. But so from 1960, state hospitals went from 535,000 residents to 137,000 in 1980. So in 20 years, they dropped it by about 400,000 people.
This is just all over the country or in specific areas?
Not specific. I'm not sure of the exact areas, but these are just state hospitals.
Yeah, that sounds like countrywide to me, but yeah.
In California, they saw a dramatic reduction in state hospital beds just for California from 37,000 in 1955 to 25,000 or 2,500. Sorry. So they dropped 34,000 hospital beds by 1983. So about the same time period, there was just like a large release of institutionalized individuals just out onto the street.
Yeah.
So the recession of the 80s resulted in deep cuts to HUD, AIDS and homelessness. So the typical homeless person in the 1980s ended up being younger. So that started people less than 40 years old were more impoverished. There's a higher burden of co-occurring medical, mental health, and substance use disorders than previous generations. So with AIDS, you had the introduction. There was a lot of sharing of needles. So that exasperated things. Okay. What else?
Wait, I want to cut in. We have super famous, brilliant actress Brittany Nicole Timmons checking in. And she said that she heard in the 70s and 80s, they sent a lot of homeless people from Chicago to Hawaii, which, wow, I didn't hear about that. But that's a good idea. I mean, it gives them a much better life.
Well, it sends them to someplace warmer, right? Instead of having to battle with the winter.
Yeah.
People in Hawaii were very upset about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're expensive tickets too. It's not like you could throw them on a train and, like they share a cart. Like that's seated on an airplane.
Yeah. How'd they get them over there? Wow.
Yeah. I mean, that was the one thing about LA where I was like, this isn't the worst place to be homeless. There's pretty temperate weather year round. There's access, especially if you're down at the beach, but there's a ton of homeless people down at the beach. There's water fountains, there's bathrooms. It could be worse.
I had always thought because you see a ton of homeless people in New York City, and I always thought when I was there, I was like, why don't they go to Florida? Yeah. I mean, it's easier said than done. That is really, we're being very what's the word, like cocky about it, but
yeah, just travel. Just
go see the world.
Well, I think there's still that dynamic, especially with some of the younger people of like, that's kind of how they view it. There are people who choose to be homeless. I think they get tied up in that drug culture pretty quickly. And but I personally know someone who I have no idea what condition he's in. As of 10 or 12 years ago, he would work seasonally and then he would live under a bridge and panhandle, and he'd make like $60 a day. Right.
Wow.
Tax free, and he lived very simply. And then he disappeared from Philadelphia. The next I saw him was walking down the streets of San Francisco. He just called out my name, and there he was. Came over.
That's wild.
It was pretty wild. And he was there with it was like a group of 30 people just hanging out downtown San Francisco.
Dude, and if you've ever been to San Francisco, that's the place. It's people there. There are so many hippies everywhere. This is what, the 90s now? And there's still so many hippies just hanging out on the streets of San Francisco, living in the parks, and they're totally cool with it.
wasn't there a rule that was instated recently in the last few years that public defecation was legal in San Francisco?
This is what's interesting is there's the trend towards criminalization of homelessness, and then there's also criminalization of certain aspects like that.
Yeah.
In Los Angeles, I think it was in 2014, they decriminalized living in a car, like sleeping in a car. So prior to that, it was a crime.
Yeah.
And then they opened it up, and I mean, we can attest to the fact that they're just how many people living in vehicles.
I mean, that was
in Los Angeles.
That defecation.
Yeah, they suspended that. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
The defecation law, when that happened, my father, who's very, very Republican, right wing, was all over it because he just was looking for any reason to hate California. And so as soon as that happened, he had sent me a bunch of articles like, look at your state, look at your leaders failing and allowing people to shit all over the sidewalks. And, you know, it's like, it's like, I didn't know what to say because I know it's a complicated issue and I don't know what the solutions are. You know, this is like, there's no easy way out.
It's that lack of compassion though, and they don't realize that you can't really, it's hard to govern California because something like 1 million people a year just come here from all over the world being like, I'm going to live in California. And it's like, what can you do? You can't stop it. We should have closed borders in California. That's what we should build a wall is around California and be like, fuck you, bitch.
Well, I think that's the part of the strategy to try and keep people out of California is how expensive it is to live in certain areas. Like property prices go up because there's so many people wanting to live there, right? So stop the people from coming. So you end up with hundreds of thousands. I think I was told when we had first moved there that someone shared the statistic that 50,000 people come and go every month.
Yeah.
Which is pretty crazy when you think about it. Every month that's how that's happening.
It's somewhere between 500,000 and 1 million people come to California, and Southern California specifically wanting to become a star every year from all over the world. Mm-hmm. So it's like people who don't have compassion for that, you can suck a dick. I keep flashing up. There's a listener said something, and I thought one of you guys would. But if you want to ignore it, we can ignore it. Go ahead.
Homelessness is a symptom of a sick society.
I just couldn't find a time to interject, but it's an interesting.
Totally.
That means
all right, that's all. Keep going.
That just means we're not taking care of our people.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's funny the political views that people ascribe to because there's the view of you can look at that hobo model and be like, they're choosing to do this. Why don't they go get a job? Or you can, look at it in different ways and actually start to take into account the fact that there's mental illness involved, there's addiction involved. And then there's this seems to be with this modern era version, it's skyrocketing prices. So housing is just becoming more and more unaffordable for people, and wages are just stagnant. So people aren't getting more money to counteract that. So you just have the continually increasing reality that we're experiencing.
Dude, I want to address that because I hear that a lot in my family, and I think a lot of old people, and I've heard it from old people again recently, that whole thing of like, they could work if they want to, and that whole thing like they're putting something over on us. And I got in a fight with my mom not too long ago when she made a comment about someone who's homeless, and I'm like, they're laying down, they're sleeping on the fucking concrete, and it's like wet and disgusting. They're not putting that one over on anybody. Like they have a horrible life. Like, yeah, maybe they choose not to have a job because of some reason you don't know, but they're not putting one over on society. They're living a miserable, horrible life.
You do hear sometimes, though, that panhandlers can make really good money, like way better than if they were actually working a minimum wage job somewhere. So you hear stories like that. And you also, this is going to be very California specific, but there are places like Slab City, which is in the middle of the desert by the Salton Sea, which is maybe 2.5 hours from LA, which is basically a community of homeless people that have they've found a plot of land that was not regulated in any way and set up kind of permanent encampments. And it's a pretty wild place. And it's filled with this bizarre trash art. And it's now a tourist attraction where people will go, and they set up these like pay what you can museums, like museums of trash art. And Nathan and I went. I thought it was very, very interesting, cool place. But
Cool.
those are people that are choosing that life and seem fairly happy to some degree. So I think there's a spectrum.
And it's also, we have to realize people that are choosing the life and people who don't have the wits about them and feel trapped. It's not only mental illness. It's just like you can get to a point where you're just so beaten down. I'm sorry, but the human experience is a beating down experience. And some people just reach their breaking point. And it's not like they're putting one over on something. Like if you're sleeping on the ground outside on cement, you know what I mean?
Well,
anyway,
it's the percentage of, what do you focus on? Is it the percentage of people who could potentially, I'm sure there's 2% or 0.1% of people who are actually pulling one over on people. Sure. Like that's going to be,
but not the people who are sleeping outside. It's the people that,
But there's going to be, that's going to exist. Like with any group of people, there's going to be the whole range of people taking advantage to not taking advantage. And it's overlooking the larger problem. So one thing that when I saw this little clip or this little part, I was like, oh yeah, why did I not think about that when I started thinking about this, was just natural disasters. So if you look at Katrina, for example, the amount of homelessness that resulted from just straight up, floods and disaster, like that's something that is affecting people. And if climate change is real, that's going to continue, right?
If climate change is real,
is it real? I don't know. Huh? Is it?
Climate change.
Oh, climate change.
You guys are giving the wrong message to our viewers.
But also, 2008, the housing crisis. Like, there were people who were put into homes, were given mortgages that were shit, told that they could afford it, thought they could afford it, and then they lost whatever little bit of money they had. They lost everything. So once people get into the system of being crushed, like you're saying, David, it's like, how do you rise up and out of that? It becomes more and more difficult. If you throw in a little bit of mental illness or throw in a little bit of addiction or any other issues, I mean, even IQ is a problem. Like if like there's a certain percentage of people whose IQ are very low, or at a point where like the military won't accept below a certain point. And that level is 10% of the United States of America's average. So 10% of the United States of America can't qualify for the Army just because of their IQ. Like, what does that imply?
Totally. Yeah, we have a huge problem.
There's a comment here that kind of speaks to the Chicago to Hawaii comment that Brittany made earlier, that in the 80s, New York City bought one-way bus tickets for homeless people to go to Scranton, Pennsylvania, which is about 2 hours west. Get rid of the homeless there, which I didn't know.
Wouldn't you be pissed? You get a free ticket, and you're like, I'm in Scranton.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
I heard about that, but I thought that they sent them to Florida. But go ahead, yeah.
Actually, we got another comment here. I almost brought up this film like 4 times already. TV actor Traveler said to see Nomadland, and it's on the top of my list. I really, really want to see it. If you have any specific things about it that would be useful, let us know. But I'm very curious to see.
Okay, what do we have here? There's also the employment universe, out of work for over a year without excuse. No work for you. I've known homeless engineers. Yeah, I mean,
this was a comment.
Yeah, this is a comment. Sorry. Yeah, I mean, that's a very, very, as industries change, the economy shifts. Like people who had jobs where they could make a decent living or make a great living are, being squeezed, and it's changing dramatically.
And I'm sure COVID hasn't helped the situation at all.
Certainly not.
Dude, what are we going to see now because of COVID? Because I don't know how every other state is, but in LA still there's no jobs. Nothing is opening. And more stuff keeps closing down for good. So what are we going to see?
Philadelphia, at least, or Pennsylvania is where we are, is reopening things. On the news today, they're lifting restrictions now. Now you can travel from state to state and not have to quarantine. They're allowing people to gather at live events now, indoors and outdoors, in certain percentages. So here it seems to be on the right path. Keep my fingers crossed.
Wow. You guys are lucky. I don't know. I heard there's going to be more lockdowns in California too.
Really?
That's what I heard.
In California?
What?
Are the numbers increasing?
I heard they were going down, but who knows? Like, I hear different things all the time. I heard they were going down, and then the vaccine was being rolled. And I'm hearing strange things from people I know, because I know people who are in the old age range who haven't been able to get the vaccine yet. But I know people young in their 30s and 40s who have gotten the vaccine, who are not essential workers or frontline workers or anything like that. So I don't know. I have no idea. I don't even know how you go about getting the vaccine. Are we notified? I don't know.
You're not eligible yet. You're not old enough, or you don't have the right job qualifications.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, basically right now it's anyone above 65 or healthcare workers.
Then how do people in their 30s and 40s get it?
I mean, we're like healthy enough to be less likely to have issues, so they don't care.
All right.
Oh, I think if you're obese, you have some kind of leverage. So just start smoking and eating a lot of cake, and maybe you'll get your
There you
chance.
go, David.
Sounds good to me.
All right,
So
back to homelessness.
Yeah, you said, David, that you had a list of statistics or facts.
I do. In 2012, in America, there were 630,000 homeless people. And it's funny because with these statistics of homelessness, every site that I went on said it's very difficult to figure out. They have to estimate, which is understandable, because the definitions change all the time. It's how are they going to know if someone's homeless? How are they going to know? But these definitions are homeless, like super massively homeless, no home, ain't got no home, ain't got no place to go, don't have a friend, don't have a couch. These people are out on the streets. So in 2000,
How do they? I guess it's like, you know how the Audubon counts birds. Like, is that how they walk around?
I guess that's how they do that. But also they count people who get aid and stuff like that, because they have. Okay. But so in 2012, there were 630,000 homeless people in America. How many do you think there were in 2018?
Double.
1.2.
Wrong. 553,000. They say that in America in general, even though there's certain risings in some areas, on the whole, it's going down.
Oh.
They see a trend of it going down. So whatever they're doing is helping in some way. And Sandra Davies says, if you are an essential worker, teacher, etc., you are able to get vaccinated. Well, I'm not. So thank you, Sandra Jean Davies Kopechne Jr. Okay. 25% of those are children, though. 25% of super homeless people are children. So that's really sad. Yeah, that's like really sad. 1/2 of all homeless people live in 5 states.
California,
New York,
I guess Chicago is probably a big one.
Florida,
or, like Illinois. Obviously, Chicago's not a state.
Florida, Arizona.
Hold on, I don't know what are you nodding your head to? What's yes and no?
So you got California, New York, Florida. What are the other 2?
Illinois.
Nope.
Texas?
Yes.
New Mexico.
The last one surprised me. No, Washington for some reason.
Washington.
Oh, Seattle's got a big problem.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, Seattle. They're crazy. What's this new comment? You have to wait until your age gets included. Well, my age is included. I'm way older than everybody doing it. So we have a nurse that says, call your doctor to make arrangements to get your vaccine. I don't have a doctor, and I hate all doctors. Okay, so in the United States, Black people make up 13% of the population, but how much do they make up of homeless people?
50%.
What'd you say? Say it again.
50%.
Your close is 40%. And then of the homeless people with children, what's the percentage of Black people?
Oh, I don't know.
It's 50%.
Okay.
Here's another statistic that was I found interesting. In 2010, 75,000 veterans were homeless. In 2018, how many do you think?
I don't know.
Wait, what was the 2010 number?
Approximately 75,000.
50,000.
38,000. So it's been cut in half in less than 10 years. So that's a good sign. And that's another thing too, like with all the crap the Republicans have been saying over the last 4 years, that's something they never addressed, is helping the veterans and homelessness. Sorry, go ahead.
About that. Everybody loves to like campaign on veterans, and we love veterans. We need to support veterans, and then as soon as they get elected, they forget.
Yeah, and you know all the cages they kept the wait, forget it. Bad joke. Forget it. Nothing. I didn't say anything. What percentage of homelessness people are male, do you think?
Oh,
65.
Yeah, I'd say majority.
60%. 60%. So it's funny because they give so many different statistics. They say an estimated 70,000 youths. This doesn't make any sense to me because it's more than how many people are homeless. But youth, when you're a child, every state in the union tries to take them in right away and find them a home. So there's a lot of foster homes and everything like that. But an estimated 70,000 youth per year experience some kind of homelessness. And the major reasons for homelessness are mental health issues of the parents, parental abuse, neglect, severe family conflict, and being forced to leave home after they share 2 facts about themselves. What are these 2 facts, do you think?
Homosexuality.
I don't know.
Transgender.
No, and pregnancy.
Oh.
Which, that sounds so 60s to kick someone out because they're pregnant. And what do you think the number one cause for women being homeless is in America?
Pregnancy?
No.
I don't know. I'm really bad at seeing this stuff.
It's something that we would hear about a lot in the 70s, but we don't hear about that much anymore. It's domestic violence.
Oh.
And they say only 20% of, which this sounds really low to me, 20% of all homeless people have untreated mental illnesses. Maybe they're saying that some of them have treated mental illnesses. But anyways, that sounds really low. That's a percentage I can't get behind. I don't understand why they even gave us that information because it doesn't make sense.
Who's they? This is you giving us the information.
No, I know, but I'm getting it from the homelessness fact-checking American people. Okay, these are all crimes in American cities. These are crimes in a percentage. Like begging, you guys were talking about begging is a crime in 24% of American cities. Sleeping in public is a crime in 18% of American cities. Loitering, which I don't know how they enforce this, but I guess if you're there a long time is a crime in 33%. And sleeping in your car, what percentage of cities do you think it's a crime in?
1%.
43% of cities sleeping in your car. And this is interesting because they already, like 18% of cities sleeping in public is a crime, but to lie down in particular places, 53% of cities that's a punishable crime.
It's kind of weird.
And we have a registered nurse that says she thinks the percentage of people with untreated mental illnesses is higher too. But I think that there's a lot of other things. Now, I put together a list of how you can help. Sorry, go ahead. What?
We're getting to the end of our hour, and we need to solve it still. So
yeah, so I have the things. We're gonna go through it quickly. You guys ready?
I do want to apologize to our listeners, especially our podcast listeners, for David's background noise. Sounds like someone's doing dishes, and it's really loud.
Oh yeah, someone is doing dishes behind me. I'm sorry. It's really loud. I can't even hear it.
Yeah, I secretly texted
sorry.
you, but you didn't see it. but I just
I
wanted
didn't see it.
elephant in the room because it's like all this clanging.
Speaking
Hey.
of, is
Oh, yeah.
worth pointing out that another kind of weird statistic about the criminalization of homelessness, I think it's like 34% of cities, it's illegal to feed the homeless
Oh, how are they going to enforce that? That's bizarre.
in
Yeah.
public.
All right, so we're going to go through how you can help really quickly. Like, so yeah, so I guess it's not as important as the rest of it. So number one, educate yourself, bitch, which we've just done for you. So you're welcome. Hashtag you're welcome.
Halfway there.
Number two, show some respect, faggot. So what they're saying is like on every site, they're saying, please don't be a dick to the homeless. And if you see them, they make eye contact, just say hello. And the reason why we're doing this segment now is because I revealed on another podcast. Oh, so yes, Aaron, go ahead.
I have a question.
Yeah.
This is a legitimate question that I have. I find it less confrontational to just ignore, because usually with a lot of people that want to engage, they'll, like, you're inviting more attention and more opportunity for them to like beg and ask, and like, so I tend to just ignore, and I always feel bad about it, but like, what do you do in those circumstances when then it just becomes more of a thing?
I think I would not recommend that any woman engage if she doesn't feel comfortable totally. And I would never criticize a woman, but I think you have to assess the situation for yourself. If you don't feel comfortable, I don't feel comfortable with most people engaging because they can be crazy.
Yeah.
Of any kind. So yeah, if you don't feel comfortable, don't engage, but at least have respect. Just have respect.
I had a friend who, a mutual friend of ours actually, who worked with the homeless, and what he would do, so because basically you're going to run into situations where people are asking for something from you, like they want some money or some food or something. And his strategy was to always know where the closest shelter was to give them that information. Which I thought,
that's interesting.
if you get engaged in a conversation, it doesn't answer your question specifically, Aaron, but I think it's a good point to think about.
Well, it's like when you offer, Nathan has this just a story that he's told over the years. He's probably told on the podcast of someone, a homeless person, that approached him and wanted some money to take the bus. So Nathan gave him a bus token, which is just as good as money because it'll get you a ride on the bus. And he like wouldn't take it, and he said, "Fuck you, motherfucker," or something right back.
Because he wanted booze.
So there's that.
He wanted liquor. Yeah, that's so rude, Nathan. Go ahead, Yahweh.
I've been disrespectful to a homeless person, but I do always feel bad when I look down, don't make eye contact, and ignore. Like, it always feels bad, but then it doesn't feel any better to engage. So I don't know.
Well, I would say for women, because I have seen homeless people become very violent. I've seen most homeless people I've seen, they're just normal and they're just sitting there. But I have seen some homeless people become very violent, and then wielding weapons, even swinging things around. So if you're a woman, I would say don't engage unless you feel 100% safe. So just do what you want to do.
I think something that, just real quick, it's worth pointing out that there's a lot of reasons for someone to be violent or to be aggressive in that situation, but the depravity that they're dealing with, it leads to extreme behavior. And that's the spillover problem of, it's affecting their lives, but now it's also affecting people who are walking down the street and running into these people, because especially in Los Angeles, I felt like there was a high percentage of individuals who were homeless who were mentally ill or like on drugs of some sort. So they were really unpredictable, as opposed to just the more quiet, just I'm homeless kind of.
Yeah, just don't be like DavidMonster.com's parents and say, "Get a job, you hobo." Just don't do that, Aaron. That's all we ask of you. Oh, Jesus, David. Tell them to get a job, for God's sakes.
All right, what's the rest of our solutions, David?
Okay, number 3 is donate. You can donate clothing. you don't have to donate money. You can donate old clothing, shoes, socks are a big one, food and water, and a lot of homeless people in homeless shelters. And if you don't want to donate to homeless because you think they're putting one over on you, there's domestic abuse shelters and there's children's shelters, and they need non-perishable items, like Snickers bars and things like that are really good. Number 4 is volunteer, and I'm going to find a place to volunteer. And there's another way to volunteer that I didn't even think about, but a lot of homeless shelters need teachers, and not like formal teachers, but teaching in any kind of marketable skill you have, like video editors or writers or any kind of any skill they need to teach these people so they can get work. Brilliant. That's an amazing way to volunteer, and I'm going to look into that because I think that's if you can teach someone a skill to get a job, that's a godsend. That's amazing. Number 6 is reach out, ass fucker. That's pretty self-explanatory. Just reach out, find what's available in your neighborhood, and if you feel comfortable, reach out and say, "Hey, sir, would you like a bottle of water? I'm going to the market right here," or something like that. If you don't feel comfortable, don't do it. Seek out job opportunities. If you're when next time you guys go to church, ask at your church, "Hey, does anyone need a worker? Because there's a homeless guy, whatever. I don't know." Seek out job opportunities, and you can tell homeless shelters, "Hey, there's job opportunity here for a homeless person." Get techie with it, which I didn't know this. There are apps in San Francisco. There's an app called Hand Up app that helps. In New York City, We Shelter. In Atlanta, Love for WRD. I don't know what that means. In LA, Get Help is an app. And in Philly, they have one called Street Change, where it tells you where they need donations or whatever you need to do. Sorry,
cool.
what?
I said that's cool to know. I didn't know that.
Number 9, advocate. Call local homeless shelters, ask what they need, and then you can contact local social media or local media and let them know what's going on with events and things like that and what is needed. And you can also reach out that way to find jobs and skills and blah, blah. And number 10, the most important one, don't be a homo. If you just don't be a homo. Just like,
can you clarify that for us?
When you walk by, don't spit on them. Don't sneer at them. Think about what has happened to you in your life. Think about, the things that, the people that have helped you. Think about the times that you have had things happen to you that you couldn't control. And think about, like, if you lost something, like, think about the things that could happen to you to make you homeless. Like, what if you didn't have a family? What if you, lost whatever, your house burned down? What if? There's a lot of things. Just don't be a homo. And our nurse says you need to be careful hiring homeless to your house. This is how Samantha Smart got kidnapped. Yeah, I would not hire them directly and bring them into my house. No, because as we've said, there is a high percentage of mental illness. Do it through a homeless shelter. Tell them, don't do that. Don't be some stupid old woman and hire them to come into your house and you're all alone with homeless people. Or do it if you want to. I don't know. But I didn't know Samantha Smart got kidnapped that way. I had no idea.
Those are all really great. I don't
Thank you.
know if we solved the problem as a whole from the top down.
Oh, I got it.
Oh, Nathan's got it.
Yeah. We just have to eliminate greed. And increase compassion.
I
probably
want everything I want, and I want it now. So you can suck a dick if you want to take my greed away from me. Go ahead. What were you saying? Sorry.
Well, it's I said what we needed to do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, let's eliminate greed. All right, we have another great idea, or a thing that actually I saw, but I didn't think to say, is that they can't easily get jobs because they don't have an address. That's what a listener says. Yeah, and there's, go ahead, yeah.
I was just going to say there's a few approaches that people are taking. There's like the housing first approach, which is like just get people houses. Like that's the big thing. Like put people in a room so they can have an address, but also how they can have a place to live. Like we need to build affordable housing or, housing that's free, and there's like tiers of it. The other approach or another approach is a multi-tiered approach, so that you're realizing it's not just they don't have a house, it's that there's mental illness, there's substance abuse, there's other things that need to be dealt with alongside of the homelessness problem in order to help people.
Yeah, our listener here pointed out that drugs play a big role in homelessness.
Yes,
true.
Totally. Because he's hooking up with them often, he says.
Yeah, he hooks up with
but what I was going to say is the address situation. They say that a lot of like organizations and stuff will give addresses for homeless people, or give like places to call to get their messages and things like that. And it goes through homeless shelters and all that. So so that's another thing you can do. Yes, I want cake and pie. A listener points out that I want cake and pie. How do they know that I want cake and pie? I want cake and pie right now. Another listener says, I try to take care of these people. Ooh. Listener, can you tell us how you're taking care of these people? Are you taking them behind the gym? And no, Scientology will not help homeless people. Scientology will not give money to anyone else but Scientology. A listener points out that because some churches do help out. I am very anti-Christian in every way, but there's a lot of Christian churches that have homelessness programs and stuff. Scientology will not give any money for that at all. At all. Go ahead, yeah?
What happens when you take someone behind a gym?
I don't know. Listener, can you tell us what you do to these homeless people when you take them behind the gym and
David,
you take care of them?
Do you teach them how to catch a pitch?
Ooh.
I don't know what that means exactly. I don't know what that means.
Or throw a ball?
Oh, so that's all I got for homelessness. But should we tell our listeners the big surprise?
I'm ready to tell them the big surprise.
The surprise is we're ending this podcast, but don't go anywhere. We've got another podcast right after this.
Ew. This is the end of 265. Episode 266 is going to start in less than a minute. We've got a great topic planned about forgiveness.
Forgiveness. Can you forgive us? And our listener says that when he takes care of them, it has to do with anus time. That's nice.
Way to end episode number 265. Thank you guys for tuning in. Please look out for our next live stream on our Facebook page or Instagram account at Unimaginary Friend. And we will be back again in 1 minute.
Wait. Oh, don't go anywhere, bitch.